What up, Entourage? So, you're gonna be glad you tuned into this one, guys. I've never, ever revealed my secrets to DFX success, but since it's the holiday season, I wanted to do something special for you guys. So, I decided to make this video. I've never revealed, my secrets before. Some of the stuff will sound familiar, but I guarantee you some of this stuff you've never heard before. And if you apply these methods, chances are you will increase your chances to win some money. Now, it's easier said than done. I guarantee if you do these, you will win, but it's all in the details. So anyway, I'm not going to keep you guys waiting any longer. Let's get into it. The fantasy football Entourage for winning. So, having played DFS since 2016, have a lot of experience. For those that don't know me, I actually won one of the bigger tournaments. It was the one where you play like $333. I won first place. I won $250,000, but I split, so I only got $112,000, which I can't complain. And as recent as last year, one of my followers, one of you guys, won a trip to the championship with one of my lineups. So I think he won like $20,000 off the bat. Got a free trip to Miami, which he took me with him. There's a long story about that. We ended up placing. I think we won like $40,000, and we didn't get the $1 million. But one of the reasons why was because I had cold feet last minute, and I actually had a top 5 lineup, but I got scared. I got some bad information, and I got scared because of the weather. So I had Mahomes and Tyreek. That was the snow game where they both went nuts, and I pulled them out last minute. And unfortunately, that cost us quite a bit of money. But what I'm going to share to you today, and the reason I say if you apply this stuff, you could win money. But the thing is, there's certain trends that I noticed, but you still got to be able to get the trends right. And I'll go more into detail on exactly what I mean by that, okay? So right off the bat, guys, you got to hit the chalk. And what I mean by that, every week, there's certain players that are pretty much a slam dunk. So you can't just get cute and be like, okay, well, since everybody's going to play these players, I'm not going to play them. No, there's like 2 or 3 players that you got to play. You know, your Derrick Henrys, your Devontae Adams, because if you don't play them, you're not going to have a fighting chance. So that's first and foremost. So nothing crazy there. You know, you probably know that already. But I just want to reiterate, because I see too many times a lot of people get cute. They try to be contrarian, and then it costs them, you know, some money and a chance at winning. Okay, now the second part of that is you have to be a contrarian. But being a contrarian, you have to be smart about it. So every week I notice there's a player in a tough matchup that balls out. Perfect example last week, week 12. Tyreek Hill was what many would perceive as a tough matchup against Carlton Davis. What did he do? He went absolutely nuts. I remember a couple years back, too, when we had the Legion of Doom, and it was Watson's rookie year. They were playing, I think it was even in Seattle, and people were asking me, hey, should I bench DeAndre Hopkins? Never. And he went nuts on them. He had over 200 yards receiving and either 1 or 2 touchdowns. So, you know, in season long, always play your studs. But in DFS, there's always going to be at least one player in what's perceived as a tough matchup that balls out. And this is what I'm saying. If you follow these rules, you're going to win. But the hard part is determining who that one player is. Who is going to be this week's Tyreek? Or last week, Derrick Henry, Indianapolis Colts were good all year against the run. He also balled out. So that's the tricky part. So it's easier said than done. Okay? But just keep in mind when you're making your lineup, do I have a player in a tough matchup in my lineup? Because there's one every week, guys. I've been playing 3 or 4 years straight now, and I guarantee you every single week there's a player in a tough matchup that balls out. The key is getting a player in a tough matchup that has that's in a high scoring game. And the way you find that out is look at the Vegas odds. See what games are the highest scoring games, because Vegas, those guys rarely miss, okay? Now, the third step, just like there's a player every week in a tough matchup that balls out, there's a player every week in a gimme matchup that falters. And again, easier said than done. It's easier to say, okay, well, I know there's going to be a player like a Dalvin Cook week 12 against Carolina, Derek Carr, DJ Moore against Minnesota. All these guys were perceived slam dunks or chalk players. So it's tricky. You got to get the chalk players, but you got to get the right chalk players, because we know every week, just like there's a player in a tough matchup that overcomes it, there's a player in a slam dunk matchup that clunks. So that's why it gets tricky. So yeah, with that said, look out for those players. It's hard. Derek Carr, he's not exactly, in the same stratosphere as Dalvin Cook. That was, I warn people, a letdown game. Dalvin Cook, it's hard. Sometimes you just got to go on intuition and who you think, can let you down. And sometimes you got to ride the hot hand too. So, Dalvin Cook, I don't know what to say. He clunked. you gotta try to predict who that's gonna be. Number 4, stack players on high scoring games. I mentioned the Vegas game. So this week, week 13, the highest scoring game is the Tennessee Titans against the Cleveland Browns. So don't be scared to make a team with Chubb, with Henry, with AJ Brown, with Austin Hooper. Like, stack those players, okay? Because they're gonna, granted, if there's more points scored in those games, that's gonna be more opportunities. So you don't have to spread yourself thin and get players all over the place, because then you gotta get those players right. But if you stack players, and let's say let's say AJ Brown, for instance, okay? Let's say you stack him and Corey Davis, or him and Adam Humphries. Let's say AJ Brown only has 18 points. You spend a lot of money on him. But then you get another 18 from Adam Humphries or Corey Davis. You get what I'm saying? Then that makes up, because then you have extra money to spend on another position instead of trying to guess right. Or let's say you get a player that goes off. Like, let's say AJ Brown only gets you 10 or 13. He has a clunker, but then Adam Humphries gets you 23. Or AJ Brown or AJ Brown is the guy that goes off, but you don't know who it's going to be. It's going to be him or Corey Davis. He gets 30 and Corey Davis gets 10. It's still 40 points. So that's why it's good to stack these players on the high scoring games. And it goes, the same thing with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. Let's say Derrick Henry is that guy who clunks. We expect him to kill Cleveland, and he only gets you like 13 points. But then Ryan Tannehill goes off. Well, that makes up for the Derrick Henry clunk. So that's why it's good to stack players in DFS. All right. Number 5, play secondary players on the high scoring games. Okay. Secondary players would be like, everybody knows if Arizona, you're starting, Kyler Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, but maybe you want to get in that Christian Kirk. In Tennessee and the Cleveland game, maybe you want to get in that Landry or that Austin Hooper or that Adam Humphries or that Corey Davis, because it's not always the studs that come through in those games. And that's where people lose. And that's where I was telling you earlier, it's like there's always a player in a slam dunk matchup, that clunks. But what happens is, because it's a slam dunk matchup, defenses are more focused on AJ Brown, on DeAndre Hopkins, and they do everything in their realm to shut down that player, so then that other guy comes through. Okay, so don't be scared to get those secondary players in those high scoring games. Okay, the 6th step to success: every week there's a wide receiver 3 or 4 that plays like a borderline wide receiver 1 or 2. Those cheap 3,000, 3,500 players, you have to get that right. So this way you could get your chalk players, you could get your slam dunks. And let's say you get all those guys right and you only have a little bit of money. So you got to get that guy. So every week, last week, and I told you guys, those who are my DFS group, I said it's going to be Bissy Johnson. Boom, it was. You see, Adam Thielen was out, so everybody was looking at Jefferson. Jefferson did his thing too. But it was a high-scoring game, okay? And then it gives other players an opportunity to step up. Gabriel Davis was another one. I think he was like 3,300 or something like that. So there's always that one player that's super cheap. That's $3,000. I've mentioned Adam Humphries. I think Adam Humphries could be that guy. I'm not saying he will, but there will be a guy that's in that $3,000 to $3,500 range that you put at flex because that's the only money you got left over that always balls out every week. So the key is to find who is that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 in a high scoring game that's going to play like that borderline wide receiver 2 or 1. Okay. Every week. It's foolproof, guys. It's foolproof. And then last but not least, guys, and this is why I don't send my lineups to last minute. There's always injuries that factor into how well a player is going to do. Okay? Last week, Derrick Henry from the outside looking in, the Colts, tough matchup. DeForest Buckner missed that game due to COVID. That's an injury that affected that game that allowed Henry. I guarantee you Henry doesn't go nuts. He doesn't score 3 touchdowns before Buckner is there. Same thing, Adam Thielen. Now this is a different type of injury, right? Adam Thielen misses. All eyes on Jefferson. But you gotta look at those other guys. The Kyle Rudolphs who did very good for his price. The Bissy Johnson. Same thing goes if a team's corner is missing. You know, a lot of people are focused on those stud corners, the number 1 corners, the big names. Denzel Ward, he's out against the Titans this week. But when that happens, that means the second corner now becomes the one. The third corner now becomes the second corner. And now you got a fourth corner, a rookie usually, that comes in to play the third corner, the nickel corner. So all of a sudden that slot receiver that everybody's overlooking is a great value. That's what you got to keep your eye on. And usually there's always, there's injuries that we know ahead of time. Like we know Denzel Ward is out, but there's always last minute scratches that happen like an hour or 2 before the game, which is why I wait, that have an effect on the game. Okay. So you really got to be up on things. You got to be on Twitter. You got to be paying attention because yes, those big names, those fantasy relevant players, you always hear who's out, but those other names, the offensive linemen who you think have no bearing on the game, but they do, that's what you gotta watch out for. Okay. So quick recap, guys. The secret to fantasy or DFS success, number 1, you gotta get those chalk players, those slam dunks. However, those slam dunks, some of them are not always slam dunks. Okay, so there's always, number 2 is there's always going to be number 2 was there's always players in tough matchups that people, fade because they're scared of a matchup. That's another thing, guys. Don't be scared of any matchup. There's no shutdown corners or anything like that. Big players do big things, and with that said, there's always a player in what's perceived as a tough matchup, Tyreek last week against Carlton Davis, that overcomes that matchup and balls out. Third, there's always a player in a slam dunk matchup, Dalvin Cook last week against Carolina, that clunks. Number 4, stack players in what's going to be high scoring games. Look at the Vegas. Number 5, get those secondary players, the not so obvious names that are going to be in those high scoring games. Number 6, every week there's a wide receiver 3 or 4 that you could put at flex between $3,000, $3,500 that ends up being a wide receiver 2, possibly even wide receiver 1. You got to figure out who that is. Again, usually in these games that are going to be high scoring, check the Vegas odds. And number 7, always look at injuries, and not just from fantasy players, and skill positions, but offensive linemen, cornerbacks, the second corner, the third corner, the defensive line, the linebackers. Look at all injuries and see how those injuries, what players those injuries affect that could possibly overplay their projections. All right, guys, as usual, if you have any questions, comment down below. All right. If you're interested in partaking in my betting services, it's going to be $20. It's between 5 to 10 bets, or $10 for my slam dunk lock of the week. You don't win that, I do give you a free week the following week. And if you're interested in my actual DFS lineups, it's $20 for the week or $50 for the month. All right. You can email me at fantasyfootballrapper@gmail.com. or DM me at fantasyfootballrapper on Instagram. Comment here. We'll communicate. It's very easy to get a hold of me. Until next time, guys, I hope you found this video valuable. And if you did, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Love you guys. Until next time.